said, you know, don't be intimidated by me. I go, yeah, right. But in those 10 minutes, I made a trusted friend. And why? Because I had the courage to be my authentic self. I told him something that was quite embarrassing. I was so intimidated by him. But in those few minutes, I had earned a great champion. And he personally walked me down the hall to the manager and introduced me to the manager in charge of the RFP, the request for proposal. Multi-million-dollar opportunity, because I had the courage to be my authentic self. Now, when you go into this world of prospecting, it's very important that you make friends at the top. Okay, when I was selling software, I was also asked to call upon the CIO of Philip Morris, one of the largest packaged goods companies in the world. And I left him 61 voice messages. Okay? And when he finally took my call, he answered it. He greeted me like an old friend. Not only did he give me 2 hours, but he also invited me to have lunch at Park Fifth Avenue in the executive suites of Philip Morris. Why do you think he did that? It was a one-way conversation, but I left very entertaining, informative emails with my authentic self coming through on that voicemail in such a way that he felt endeared already to me in those 61 voice messages. I had a little persistent. So I arrive at the Philip Morris building. I come up in the elevator, and the CIO is there to greet me, and he informs me at that moment that 7 other of his directors have agreed to come and see my presentation that day. Because part of our system at Gunpowder Business is we send an email. You know, we leave great voicemail, but we follow it up with a wonderful email. And this email allowed him to invite these directors, and it was so enticing that they all decided to come. So we go into this lunchroom, very beautiful, wood-paneled, and there are these leather-bound folders in front of every place. And I noticed people are checking off what they want to have for lunch. And when all the books were closed and on the table again, the CIO pushed a little button, and the panel opened in the wall, and in came the serving staff. And they silently collected all these folders for our lunch. And then all eyes turned on me, and I presented my reasons for building a global intranet for Philip Morris. Well, I guess the meeting went all right, because afterwards the CIO took me aside and he personally referred me to the CIO of Kraft Canada, Kraft USA, and Miller Beer. And that's the power of making some friends at the top. But let's go back to Mr. AAA for a moment. Okay, Mr. AAA introduced me to that manager in charge of the RFP. I get an introduction. I fly back to Toronto. I have all my engineers ready to meet and accept this RFP and ask questions and so forth, because that's very common. I fly from Toronto to Atlanta, and I get a call from my president. My president tells me the manager has declined giving us the RFP. He says that there's not enough time to respond, and it would cost far too much money for our company to turn around in time. So I couldn't believe what I was hearing with regards to not being able to accept this RFP. And I'm pacing my hotel room in Atlanta thinking, what can I do, what can I do? And then I remember my friend, Mr. AAA. Chances are he doesn't scare just me, right? So I leave him a voicemail. And it goes something like this. Mr. AAA, I just want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to meet with the manager in charge of the RFP. Regrettably, I have to inform you that he has not allowed us to participate in this RFP. He considers it too short notice, and it would be too expensive for us to respond in time. And I assured him that our president was completely committed to doing this because we had just built the intranet for Body Shop International. I said it's a shame that we can't participate because I know our expertise would lend a great deal of value to your organization. But I want to thank you very much for the introduction, and I hung up. Well, 45 minutes later, I got a call from my president in Toronto, and he says, what did you do? We're in. And that's the power of making friends at the top of an organization. And many people can be very intimidated by those individuals. But remember, you have to have a little courage. And if you're rooted in your big mission and your big why, those fears can dissipate. Now I want to share with you a little bit about my system of support. How do you bulletproof yourself for prospecting, or your assistant, or someone on your team? Large organizations, small organizations, I see it time and time again. I was just at Office Depot this week. They sent me their introductory letters that they armed their salespeople with. They were dismal. Okay, so it's not just small organizations that don't have systems. Even large organizations don't have systems. So I'm going to share my system by telling you a story when I was the U.S. sales manager for a loyalty company. And I was given my largest quota ever. I was told that for my large bonus, I needed to sign 102 contracts within a year. And they were tier 1 organizations like Amazon.com, FTD, Neiman Marcus. Think of a big brand that's online. That was on my target list. And I had a year to sign 102 new contracts up. They had budgeted $10,000 a month in travel, and they had budgeted an executive assistant called Marie. Well, Marie and I were thinking, how am I physically going to meet with enough prospects? Because if you do the numbers, maybe your closing ratio is 1 in 4. That's 400 prospects in a calendar year that you have to meet. Right? So we put our heads together and we decided that I was going to train Marie to do my prospecting for me. So the first thing I did was I armed her with a great value proposition. So I started thinking like a chief marketing officer at Amazon. I started to understand what the benefits were, or what he wanted to hear, what risks were involved with him. Right? And I hammered out a great value proposition, and I taught her how to leave a fantastic voicemail. And the reason I start people off with voicemails, does anybody reject you on voicemail? No. In fact, they get a chance to absorb all the good reasons why you're calling. So you want to tell them who you are and what your purpose is. You want to establish some credibility. You have 10 seconds for that. And a good way to establish credibility is what? Anybody? How do you establish credibility with a stranger?
References, maybe?
References. The good work that you've done for others. That's right. Exactly right. And then one final little thing that I think is the hinge to opening a big door is tell them that you are going to send them more information via email, so that they're looking for that email. And then Marie was able to find contacts and names and so on very easily. So we rehearsed, we practiced until she was very comfortable with this voicemail. And then I armed her with this great email, and she sent that up. So far, we've gone from a cold call to now we've left great voicemail, we've sent them email. Is it a cold call anymore? No, they know who you are, why you're calling, and the good reasons, and the good work that you've done for others. So then we practice rebuttals. There are 10 common rebuttals out in the industry right now. Anybody care to guess what some of those common rebuttals are?
Too expensive.
Too expensive. That's right. You're too expensive. That usually doesn't come out. They don't usually know the price by then. But I have no budget might come out, right? I have no time. I have no budget. We have someone taking care of that. There are 10 common objectives. So you want to write those out and actually get prepared for the answers. Be prepared for the no. So when you call, when people pick up the phone, it's very interruptive. They're doing something else. They're checking their email. They're expecting another phone call. They're not expecting you. So we don't like to put people under that kind of pressure when they're first calling. We want to give them a chance to digest the good reasons why you would like this meeting. And it goes much better. So Marie, in her first week, booked 4 chief marketing officers of tier 1 organizations. How do you think she felt at that point in her first week? Pretty good, right? Her confidence went up. She still hated prospecting, but she was getting a lot more experienced at it. She got so good at prospecting that she would sometimes book 9 meetings in a day for me. In 6 months, we were able to sign 102 contracts. And in 9 months, we surpassed that. We had over 200 contracts signed because we were using our time most effectively. So I want to ask you right now, what big door in your life would you like to open? And my parting words to you is just remember that big